So by day 73 of this administration, the Trump administration, the twin themes of retribution and chaos have become the new normal. But there are still some actions that are so petty and so vindictive that they actually managed to stand out in all of this. For example, just about a month ago, the Social Security Administration did something incredibly strange. All of a sudden, out of the blue, the agency stopped letting new parents in the state of Maine get Social Security numbers for their kids at the hospital. They also stopped letting funeral homes file death records electronically. Everything would now have to be done in person at a Social Security office in that state. Again, this was all done just in one state, the state of Maine. And of course, the changes, as you know, would cost more. It would certainly take a little bit more time. And it meant that the parents of newborn babies who are already dealing with lots of important things by bringing a new life into this world, well, they would have to now risk getting sick by going in person to crowded Social Security offices and possibly spending hours in line to get their paperwork. The question is, why did the Social Security Department make that change? Why did it only apply to the state of Maine out of all the states? Well, it turns out that it may have been because of this.
Is the Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Not here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't.
Well, back in February, Trump signed an executive order aimed at banning trans athletes from competing in school sports. The governor of Maine, Janet Mills, who you saw in that clip, she refused to comply, saying that was an issue for Maine's state legislator to decide, not the president of the United States. And you know what happened? Trump was furious.
You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
So now Democrats on the House Oversight Committee are alleging that clash that you just saw there, that threat by Trump and Maine's Democratic governor, Janet Mills, is the reason that Maine was singled out by Social Security. Emails obtained by the committee show that just a week after Trump's clash with Mills, the acting commissioner of Social Security, Lee Dudick, directed his staff to cancel the contracts that allowed Maine to process Social Security number and death records electronically, writing, quote, "No money will go from the public trust to a petulant child." Now, because of public outcry, the changes to Social Security in Maine only ended up lasting about 2 days before the agency reversed course. But amazingly, the acting commissioner of Social Security, Lee Dudick, has not been shy, I should say, about how the original changes were actually meant to be that, retribution. In fact, he told the New York Times, quote, "I was ticked at the governor of Maine for not being real cordial to the president." Obviously, making social services worse for citizens of one state as political retribution is a huge scandal on its own, and it should be a huge scandal. Multiple members of Congress are already calling for the acting commissioner to resign over this. But the open question here is, did he actually freelance this retribution? Did Dudick do this on his own, or was anyone above him at the White House involved in this action against the state of Maine? Joining us now is Representative Shelley Pingree of Maine, one of the members of Congress now calling for the acting commissioner to resign. Representative Pingree, thank you so much for being with us tonight. So quite a shocking development. And before we get to that, I do want to start, though, with some news out of the Department of Agriculture, which announced that it was actually freezing some of the funding it provides to schools in Maine in response to alleged Title IX violations about trans athletes. The department claimed that it was only freezing administrative funding and not touching funds for child nutrition. I understand your office actually has some news on that front this evening. What can you tell us?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for highlighting this issue, what crazy times we're living through. So this retribution continues to our state. We're being singled out, but it's just like so many other things that Trump is doing. We learned tonight that even though the Secretary of Agriculture said that no child will go unfed, that if a child was fed today, they'll be fed tomorrow, but now they have fired all the personnel who administer these programs, school lunch, school breakfast, the snacks. So great that the money will be there, but if we can't get it to the schools, how are they going to serve lunch? It's crazy what they're doing here.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like, and they've certainly put Maine in the crosshairs, all from that interaction that we highlighted earlier on. But help us broaden the aperture here for a moment. Other than the Social Security and the Department of Agriculture, in your opinion, how else has the Trump administration been targeting the state of Maine?
Oh, sure. They've been doing a variety of things. They started off by taking all the funds from our Maine Sea Grant program. Now, that's a program that directly helps our fishermen who are challenged by, ocean warming, sea level rise. Also helps our coastal communities. And we were struck by some severe storms last year, and the Sea Grant program helps with that. The whole delegation jumped on that. A few days later, they took it back. Then they went to the University of Maine, said they were going to take away all the funds for research on, simple things like the potato beetle or PFAS in our soil. A few days later, they took that back. Then they went after the one that you heard about, or you mentioned, at the Social Security Administration, where they're doing an incredible amount of damage. And just the very idea that a newborn, a mom with a newborn baby in a very rural state has to go to a Social Security office. I mean, it's just unthinkable. But as you said, people pushed back and they took it back. But this continues. Somewhere in the middle there, Trump said he wanted a full-throated apology from our governor. Mm-hmm. And then today we got this notice from the Secretary of Agriculture. But let's face it, we think these are illegal and unconstitutional activities. I'm an appropriator in Congress. We have the power of the purse. He doesn't. So he has no right or ability to take away this funding. And then what kind of world do we live in where you get mad at a governor who has to follow the laws of our state, and also a recent Supreme Court decision, so she's dealing within the parameters she's got, and then you say if you don't apologize or you're a petulant child, then suddenly your state is going to be denied this money that goes to farmers or to kids. I mean, it's really outrageous.
I'm curious as to how your Republican colleagues are responding to the state of Maine. The actual Republicans in the state of Maine, how are they responding to being targeted by the President of the United States, by the Social Security Administration, by seeing some of the funding that you just outlined, being on the chopping block simply for the governor of that state to say she is going to follow the law?
Well, I think some of them, as in Senator Collins, who fought hard to get the Maine Sea Grant money back, and who doesn't want to see our funding targeted, and as also as the chair of the Appropriations Committee, has appropriately fought back. There are those in the legislature who will use this for their political gain. It was a state legislator who started the fight on transgender athletes in our school. By the way, we have 2, or maybe it's down to 1. So they are targeting and making young people feel, very challenged and putting them in a difficult situation. But that is a matter for the Maine legislature to decide, or this to be adjudicated in the court. The fact is the president is just using his power. I mean, who is the petulant child here? He did not like being talked back to by the governor, and he doesn't like someone saying, I'll see you in court. He always feels he's going to win in court. And as we know, he's losing about 95% of the cases in front of the courts right now.
Yeah, he is one of the most thin-skinned presidents we have seen in this country. Shelley Pingree, Congresswoman from the great state of Maine, thank you so much for joining us. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Up next here tonight, today was another bad day for Trump lawyers in court. We're going to talk live with the lawyer who argued against the administration and some of its most draconian policies. We'll explain when we come right back.